What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is the Die Hard MMA podcast, Total Takedown for UFC Vegas 59. We are going back over this awesome card. We are looking for totals to play instead of picking money lines or sides. So we're going to break everything down and go over how long we think these fights are going to last. Do me a favor, smash that like button if you haven't already. If you're an audio listener, then give me that 5-star review. That definitely goes a long way to helping out your boy. Hopefully we can find some good spots to get back on track here. First fight of the night, Stephanie Egger taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. This is one that I actually feel like maybe you can turn the women's MMA argument on its head and bet some violence here. Total set at 2.5. The over is minus 220. The under is plus 190. Mayra Bueno Silva hits hard. She's got a significant power edge on the feet here. Egger might be the slightly more technical striker, but there is a big difference in the power here. Both these women are more than capable on the mat. Egger's got that judo. We know Bueno Silva, I believe she just got promoted to BJJ brown belt. They both have several armbar submissions. I think Egger's got that crucifix TKO situation going on. Lots of ways both these women can absolutely finish this fight. Plus 190 on the under 2.5 to start the night off. I would not hate taking a poke at that number. Miranda Granger taking on Corey McKenna. This is the exact opposite. Over is 2.5 minus 290. The under is plus 245. And I think this one sails over. I mean, Miranda Granger potentially would be the finisher out of the two of these women, but Corey McKenna is a grinding wrestler, and there's really no getting away from that. She's going to take this thing over and deep and rely on her wrestling. She uses her boxing to close the range. Miranda Granger, she can get stuck on her back. She's got decent submissions off her back. She's got an okay guard game. She's good in scrambles. But if she doesn't get on top, she's relatively harmless. Now, if she does get on top in the wrestling situation, her ground and pound is nasty, and she could finish it. But I have a hard time seeing her pull that off against Corey McKenna. This is one of those ones where it's like the underdog inside the distance is really the only way I see it playing out. It's rare that the favorite is the one that you would normally think would be finishing. But the way Corey McKenna fights, I think it's Corey McKenna by decision or Miranda Granger inside the distance. Those are the two ways I'd see it. I don't want to play an under 2.5. You'd get a much juicier number on Miranda Granger inside the distance if that's how you wanted to go. So I would say over minus 290. Hard to play that though. Josh Quinlan taking on Jason Witt. Oh boy, this fight. And total set at 1.5 for obvious reasons. Over 1.5 is minus 145. Under 1.5 plus 125. Josh Quinlan, interesting case. He's coming off Dana White's Contender Series. He has been off of a 9-month suspension because he agreed to the suspension for taking steroids. Not a tainted supplement, not something that was an accident. He straight up just went, okay, you got me. So now he's coming back, and I'm curious to see what he's going to look like off that 9-month suspension. USADA probably watching him extremely closely, but the guy's got serious pop in his hands. Good technical striking, strong hips, good sprawl and brawl. He's taking on Jason Witt, maybe the new belt holder for chinniest man in the UFC. However, Jason Witt is an absolute gorilla if he gets his hands on you. He's a strong offensive grappler, very physically powerful. He does tend to slow down and gas out if he gets in these extended brawl type of fights, though, where he hangs in there. I kind of think Jason Witt can show a little something here in this fight. You know, even in his last couple fights, it wasn't just like the first punch that touched him and he went down. He was able to get the takedowns against Phil Rowe, got a round off of him before they got stood back up to start round 2, and then he got popped in the mouth after that. So I kind of think the over 1.5 at minus 145 is a decent way to look at it. Maybe there's some ring rust for Josh Quinlan. Maybe Jason Witt has a little bit of early success and it takes until he slows down before he ends up getting caught by something. I do think we can squeeze over that 1.5 round mark, but it's terrifying to take overs when your opponent really doesn't have any durability to speak of. So not what I'm planning on actually betting, but for the sake of show, got to give a pick. I'll say over 1.5. Takashi Sato taking on Bryan Battle. Total for this one is 2.5. Kind of similar to the last fight. The over 2.5 is minus 150. The under 2.5 is plus 130. The difference between this fight and the last fight is rather than somebody being chinny, we just have a guy with crazy power. Takashi Sato's got big power. This guy has that one-hitter quitter, no problem. The problem is he has not been able to apply that against fighters who are well-rounded, have a grappling game they can mix in, and can control the range. Bryan Battle seems to be a kid that checks all those boxes for me. I think Bryan Battle's got a relatively bright future. I think he's talented. He's dropping to a new weight class. As long as that cut didn't go poorly for him, I think he'll be able to control the range here, maintain the space. He should be able to eat a shot or two. Hopefully he doesn't lead with his face. Hold your nose. And I'd play the over 2.5 at -150, personally speaking. Eric Gonzalez taking on Terrence McKinney. Total on this one is 1.5, and the under 1.5 is juiced to -205. Holy crap. Like, when was the last time we had an under 1.5 -205 for the lower weight classes? Like, for heavyweights, for 205ers, I get it, but like these are little guys here that we're talking about. Terrence McKinney's got crazy finishing upside. The kid is fast. He is explosive. He's got power in his hands. Nearly killed Drew Dober the last time out. If all that fails, he actually has a slick little submission game on him that he can fall back on. The Ghost Pepper, Eric Gonzalez, this is a guy that's very hard to finish. Only knockout loss came to Jim Miller in his last UFC fight. So prior to that, he'd been relatively durable, and it was really the ground game and the submissions that really were causing him some problems. He was hanging in there and dragging people late. This one I do not want to lay -205 on. I think the under 1.5 is the way to go. I think that it's violence. Terrence McKinney probably is set up to run through this kid in the first round. However, again, Eric Gonzalez, besides his last fight, has been relatively durable. He's been a guy that's been able to take some punches from some big hitters. If he manages to somehow evade the round one of Terrence McKinney, we've seen Terrence slow down, gas out, get tired, and then has been very hittable and very susceptible to getting knocked out himself. I guess I'll put it that way. So that also lends itself to the under 1.5. So the answer is under 1.5. I just don't really want to pay -205 to see if these guys can get it done in under 1.5. That's the obvious pick. There's a reason it's lined that way. It's almost like the bookies, they almost don't want your action here, right? They want to entice you on that over 1.5. They're going to make you lay it if you really want to play the under 1.5. So I'm going to stay away from it, but the pick is probably going to be first round stoppage, Terrence McKinney. Michelle Oleksiejczuk taking on, or Mihal, I guess is the right way to say that. Sam Alvey, total again at 1.5 for this one. Over is -155. Under is +135. And I was going to say over. Because Sam Alvey has worked his way to some close split decisions recently. When he is on point, he tries to skate to the outside, avoid his opponents, land a couple big shots, walk them into a power shot, and he's been robbed on the judges' scorecards a couple times. He's talking about ending this thing in the first round. And I know fighter talk is cheap, right? They can all say whatever they want, and then they come out and they have a completely different game plan. Sometimes they're just trying to suck their opponents into thinking one thing or the other. But we know how Oleksiejczuk fights. He's going to barrel forward. He's going to keep the pressure on you. He's going to look to use his fast hands, walk you down, punch you in the mouth, and hurt you. Sam Alvey said that he's going to knock this guy out in the first round. So I think it's one of those things where it doesn't benefit Sam Alvey to say that. We already know what Oleksiejczuk's going to do. There's no mind games going on here. This is his last UFC fight. He wants to go out on a win. He may not even get a contract if he gets the win on Saturday. So it's a spot where he's really got nothing to lose. I kind of think the under 1.5 at +135 might actually hold some value here because Oleksiejczuk might just be able to simply run straight through Sam Alvey at this phase of his career. We're worried about his durability. We've seen his last couple fights and how bad he's looked. He's not hanging in there the way that he used to, and that's the unfortunate part about it. Now, the flip side of this is that if Sam Alvey comes out with that effort attitude, puts his feet, plants them hard on the ground, he could end up finishing Oleksiejczuk in the first round as well. Guy's cutting down to a new weight class. We've seen him hit and hurt. We've seen him finished before. So, I mean, this all has like a Dana White Contender Series-esque setup for me that I think someone is going to sleep in this fight because neither of these guys are going to play it safe. So I'll say under 1.5 at +135. I'm tempted to bet that. Because, I probably would look for a 2.5 or maybe a fight doesn't go the distance or something like that. See if you can find an alternate total out there. But I do think violence is the key here in this fight. Priscilla Cachoeira taking on Ariane Lipski. Total again at 2.5. The over is -180. The under is +160. And this is another women's MMA fight that I think we might be able to argue for violence. Priscilla Cachoeira, she's got some big, nasty power. And we know she likes to get right in front of you, stalk you, hunt you down, punch you in the mouth. She bloodies up these other women. She's got those elbows that she used in the Ji Kim fight last time around. Like, she is nasty on the feet. Ariane Lipski, she's tall, she's long, she's got slick Muay Thai, big power, clinch knees, good kicks. She likes to also mix it up with the grappling a little bit. If this thing hits the ground, she is very aggressive with her submission. She has her dicing Tony Ferguson-esque elbows. This is a fight, if there's going to be a women's MMA fight, that potentially could see a finish. I don't mind the shot at under 2.5 at +160. Sergey Spivak taking on Augusto Sakai. Next up here, heavyweights over 1.5 is -150, under 1.5 is +130. And everybody is just expecting Sergey Spivak to take Augusto Sakai down immediately and get him out of there in round one. I am actually going to look more towards the over 1.5 here. We saw Augusto Sakai get taken down by Alistair Overeem. However, it took Alistair until the third round to get it done. He did it in the fourth and the fifth rounds, and that's when he finally had Augusto Sakai so broken and hurt and gassed, he was able to TKO him late in that fight. But for the early rounds, it was not something that came easy. Now, Sergey Spivak is a much more dominant wrestler than someone like Alistair Overeem. Maybe those takedowns do come easy. I'm not so convinced they're going to come easy, and I'm not so convinced they're going to come early. I could see Augusto Sakai having early success, maintaining the range, using his footwork, that long jab, trying to keep this fight standing on the feet or maybe clinched up against the cage and getting out of that first round. What happens after that is anybody's guess. I think the deeper this thing goes, the more success Sergey may have with getting those takedowns if Augusto Sakai is forced to work and he chips away at the gas tank. But I think we might be able to edge just over that 1.5. The problem is I don't like the price point. That minus 150, that's a little too much for me to lay going over, considering if Sergey Spivak gets Sakai on the mat in round one, it's probably done. I don't know if Sergey Spivak is going to let this guy get up and get back down. It's probably going to be a one-and-done type of situation if he gets in a control position, because his ground and pound is nasty. So I'm going to lean over 1.5, but one that I'm definitely not confident enough to put my money on. Juliana Miller taking on Brogan Walker. Tough finals coming up here. 2.5 is our total. Again, the over is minus 360. The under is plus 300. And I don't like that over 360, minus 360 number for the over 2.5. That's probably the way this thing goes. Brogan Walker is really tough. She's durable. She's a hard-nosed wrestler. Juliana Miller is a little bit more of a wild child. She's taller. She's longer. She's got more finishing upside, in my opinion. But at the same time, she's very green. So there is a chance, I think, in this fight for a finish. It's kind of like the one we talked about earlier. I think if there's a finish, it probably comes from Juliana Miller, who's the slight minus 120 favorite. I almost would rather play her inside the distance, because I think if Brogan is in charge of this fight, she's probably mostly just grappling. She's probably going to grind her way to a win using that, superior wrestling, the cage control, the knowledge, the experience, the BJJ black belt. Like, she's just going to have a big, significant edge in the grappling, or at least should, based on what we've seen so far. When these Ultimate Fighter contestants get into their first UFC fight, generally there's been some time. They've had an opportunity to go home, work on some things they learned on the show. We can see a whole new version of these fighters coming into the cage on Saturday, which is why I'm not overly confident about this one. Juliana Miller definitely does have some upside, I think, for finishing inside the distance, and that makes me concerned on that over 2.5 look. But I got to give a pick. I will give that as the pick. I don't like it. Zach Pauga taking on Mohammed Usman is our, not the co-main event, sorry, the second Ultimate Fighter fight here. Another 2.5 total. Over is minus 120, under is plus 100. I get action man Chris Curtis vibes from Zach. I like his game. Long jab, good footwork, defends the wrestling, good get-up game, real urgency to get back to his feet when he needs it. Mohammed Usman is just this big power winging hook clubbing type of offensive grappler brawler. I think if Usman wins this fight, it's probably a finish. I have a hard time seeing him outscoring Zach or being able to control him for large amounts of time to be able to get a decision. So if Zach wins, I do kind of think it's Zach by decision. So I will lean with that over 2.5 at minus 120. Usman has been tough. He's also scary. That power will maybe keep Zach away from him a little bit. The chance that something big could come at you if you overextend, Zach probably just plays it safe and jabs him to death. So I think that over 2.5 is probably the way to go. Co-main event, Jeffrey Neal taking off Vicente Luque. Total at 2.5. Over is plus 100. Even money. Under is minus 120 for this 2.5 co-main event mark. And I actually kind of like that over 2.5. I think both these guys have been relatively durable. It's tough to finish either of these guys. I know Neal has had some issues since he caught sepsis, and he hasn't quite been the same since returning. Vicente Luque is just a murderous killer once he gets in there. But in a 15-minute fight, I do think this one can go late. You remember a couple of fights of Vicente Luque's, like the Nico Price fight, for example. It was the eye swelling that caused that fight to end. Those guys were going to go toe-to-toe and bang it out all the way for the full 15 minutes if they could. It was the eye swelling that ended up stopping it. So I kind of think that's maybe what we get here. These guys just kind of willing to trade. Neal is very defensively sound. I think that might slow down the offense of Vicente Luque. We've seen Luque have some trouble with the grappling. Maybe Neal switches things up and mixes in a couple takedowns. I could see some clock grinding away. I'm going to say the over 2.5 at plus 100 is going to be the pick for that one. Main event time. Jamahal Hill, Thiago Santos, total set at 1.5 for this main event, which is a little terrifying. My guy Jamahal Hill is an absolute berserker, right? This guy likes to get in your face immediately. Get in your face as quickly as possible, go to work with those fast hands, long jab, likes to attack the body. I love this guy. You all know that. I love Jamahal Hill. Thiago Santos, Mr. No Knees himself, plodding, heavy on his feet, walks forward, tries to walk his opponents down, and then he just hits you as hard as he possibly can. The one thing that he still kind of got left has been that power. So we need to watch out for that. This thing definitely could finish. Thiago Santos has issued the challenge to Jamahal Hill, basically saying, let's swing and see who's still standing at the end of it. But we know with Thiago Santos fights, you always get suckered into a low-volume pick-em-poke-em type of fight, and it ends up not coming through the way the fans are expecting. But Jamahal Hill is the kind of guy that I think will step forward and give him that kind of a matchup. You know, whether it's his relentless belief in himself or, you know, maybe the blatant disregard for his own safety, I think he will force the action here in this fight. But I do think it'll take him a little bit to open up. I think Thiago Santos might get a little frustrated, struggling to chase my guy Jamahal Hill. I think the range and the speed is something that'll take Thiago a little bit to get adjusted to. So as terrifying as it sounds, I'm going to say over 1.5. I'm going to say minus 145, over 1.5 is going to be my pick here for the main event. I think that Jamahal Hill probably finishes in round 2 or round 3. Like I said, with maybe a frustrated Thiago Santos trying to, you know, swing big shots, chase him down, hit him. But before that, I think he's going to have a hard time finding my guy. So I think this one gets over that 1.5 mark, and minus 145 isn't a half bad price tag for it. That is the total takedown, folks. Do me a favor, like I said, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio if you haven't already. Smash that like button. Thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow for the undefeated post-weigh-in show. Don't forget your tinfoil hats. Let's roll.